Right, hello, welcome to episode 19 of the Sisyphus complex solution. Anybody that ends up watching this at a much later date than that, you won't know the difference, and I dare say the few followers that I've got won't notice the difference anyway, but a bit of an explanation as to why I hadn't produced an episode last week, and it's simply because of the preparation that was required for the episodes that I'm about to go into now, because it became an awful lot more complicated than I was able to put together in time for doing an episode last week. So what is essentially going to be happening here is I'm dividing episode 19 into 3 parts, obviously this being the first one. The aptly named title of the episode is, I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it, whether it's Maleborge or because it's from Dante's Inferno, whether it's Maleborge or something like that, I don't know. But it is essentially one of the layers of hell from Dante's Inferno, so anybody that doesn't understand the reference, it is the 8th circle of hell, and I do believe it is incredibly apt because the subject matter that I was looking into within the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy department has now moved into a lot of the funding programs and the supposedly innovation and things of this nature, and around universities, how they're funded and all this type of stuff. And it became a subject that does tie in very much with everything that's taking place at the moment around all of the COVID stuff. And as you'll see from the title for this part 1 of episode 19, I've called it Sage and the Onions on account of the fact that I am going to be doing something that I had made a promise about on a couple of different versions of social media online, where I said that I was going to name the people from Sage, and that's essentially what I'm going to be doing in this part 1. And as I get through parts 1, 2 and 3 and that, you'll see how this all does come together. You know, there is method to my madness, he said, hopefully. But yeah, because although there's 10 layers within the 8th circle of hell, obviously within 3 episodes, and that I'm only going to be dividing these particular groups of people within 3 of those layers. So obviously this time, and it's Bulger 10, and I've got the description on the screen as to who it is that you will generally find in Bulger 10. So that gives you a bit of an indication as to what we're going to be dealing with today. Now, because this is a 3-part thing, and hopefully I'm going to have all 3 episodes out before the end of the weekend. Bastard. The room for adding in the standard fuck off to the United Nations and World Economic Forum, that segment is not going to be included in these 3 episodes, because this one might be one of the shorter ones of the 3. The second one, I can assure you, is a very, very long one, and the third one potentially reasonably long as well. So might as well crack on and see where we go. So I wanted to do there's going to be a couple, I'm going to be messing about a little bit with my screens here today, and that because I'm working off of basically 3 different screens at the same time. So you'll have to bear with, as they say. Right, so I want to move into a recommendation because it is relevant in terms of this particular part 1 of episode 19, and it's also relevant to the subject matter as a whole. So what I wanted to do is give a recommendation, and I think I've done it once before already, in that to Ivor Cummins. I couldn't think of a single episode to recommend for people to watch, and so I've just taken a screenshot of literally the entire channel as it stands, and that's how you can just see it. And again, the links will be in the description for you to go and investigate all of the very, very important information that he's releasing. And this is particularly pertinent because of talking about the people from Sage today. So you need to be getting in and having a look at all of the high level of relevant data, and it isn't like a conspiracy theory channel or anything like that. This is somebody that actually does know what he's doing, and actually does bring in people, including, I'm glad to see, and that he had a recent episode that had Joel Smalley contributing, somebody that I've had some backwards and forward with previously when I was on LinkedIn. And the data that is being provided is absolutely critical, and it's a kind of an indication as to why there are problems around this wider subject matter that I'm going to be dealing with, because we do have a very distinct problem with the people that are sitting in certain positions at the moment, and we can look into the whys and wherefores of that, and that you have the kind of give them an excuse explanation, which we can look at that as well. And then you have the other side of the equation, which is more alongside of the other picture that I've got there, and that's of James Delingpole again, who did a good episode with Patrick Wood. Now Patrick's rather well known to a lot of us that have some understanding around the technocracy and the beginnings of all of the stuff that you tend to hear about now. Like, so when we hear about the Great Reset and the Agenda 2030 and blah 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 blah, he knows the history of it, and he's been looking into this sort of stuff for something like around about 40 years. So again, he's not a David Icke type of person at all, and that he does tend to be considerably more factual than that. But he's somebody that's worth listening to, and just pay attention to some of the details that he comes out with, and then look into it for yourself, because as with all things, and the same as with me as well, you don't necessarily have to just take one person's opinion on something. Okay, so that was a couple of recommendations that I wanted to make this week. This next little intro to before we go into all of the participants of SAGE, for which there's relevant information that I'll go into in a little while. I had noticed this analogy that was going around on the internet, the one that's on the well, to me it's on the left hand side of the screen, so anyway, for me it's on the left hand side of the screen that's right in front of me, so well, I can't remember what that ends up being later on. It's on the right or the left. Anyway, the one that's got the communist coercive methods for eliciting individual compliance, the Biderman report of 1956, and then comparing that to COVID-19. Now I thought this was interesting to put up. It's doing the rounds a little bit online at the moment, because I mean, yes, you can find some kind of comparative between a whole range of different methodologies that have been used for rather dubious purposes. You can find this sort of stuff all over the place, and then try to link it together to something else to say, look at the similarities. But I did think this was a very good one, so I thought I would put that one up. So, you know, have you stick it on pause and whatever, and then have a look at it, and that, or just have a look for it online for yourself, because it is intriguing, at least, especially when, like I say, when you look into some of the background of the some of the wider issues that we're having to deal with here. And then obviously I've had to put up a little series of 4 cartoons to give essentially what my opinion is of the kind of organisations that we get from, you know, and the type of guff that we get coming out of organisations like SAGE, and that these groups that get together and apparently they're all experts, you know. The light bulb analogy is quite spot on. Obviously I have to give a middle finger and that, because one of the problems that I've got at the moment is my hair is going to end up being down to my arse again one of these days, because I will not go into a hairdresser or a shop or anywhere else wearing a bloody mask. I just won't do it. And I do encourage others to turn around and have that little bit of civil disobedience to say, no, I'm not going to wear a mask. And just a little piece of information, when you get all of the nonsense around the BAME, what was it, Black Asian minority ethnic something. I don't even know what it stands for anymore. It's a horrible term. But anyway, when they're saying that ethnic minorities and so forth and that they get adversely affected by the China virus, first and foremost, they don't. It makes up something like around about 16%, which roughly falls in line with the representation inside the UK for that particular category of individual. I mean, it's horrible. This is what I don't like about putting people in categories like that. But anyway, it basically falls in line with what their representation is within the population for the UK. That is, you'll have to look in your own country to see if anybody really gives a shit, because it doesn't really matter. But the thing of it is when they're turning around and pinpointing stuff in terms of what does actually affect people from any particular kind of background, they have rather skipped over the fact that I do believe you'll find that black African origin, I mean, I don't even know what they're supposed to be called these days. I mean, it should just be people. But people that have got darker skin, whatever. These people, whether it's because of the pigmentation or what, I'm not entirely sure, but they are subject to pleurisy more than people with the pinkish, whitish, whatever the bloody hell kind of colour, blotchy skin, getting old, wrinkly, skin, whatever. People look like me, and presumably with better hair. We don't suffer with problems of pleurisy to the same extent that they do, but they seem to be skipping over that one completely. Very much along the same lines as skipping over the fact that China had, people falling flat on their face all over the place, which never happened anywhere else, strangely enough, and now has no deaths whatsoever, not a single one. And yet somehow everywhere else in the world is subject to second waves, going to be a third wave and a fourth wave and blah blah blah, but apparently it didn't happen in China. Strange that, isn't it? But anyway, so I just wanted to put this particular screen up. So let's move into what the real thing is about, seeing as I've already started me mumbling and rambling and messing about. What I want to do here is give you an introduction, a very, very brief one, to each member of the SAGE committee, and where I'm able to just put in like the job description, I've got up on a separate screen, which is why I'm going to be messing around a little bit, a few more details which I'm keeping to myself, but where relevant I will just give a little nod to say, well, there's this and there's this. So in terms of this first particular grouping, and yes, that's what I've got to try to remember what the hell it is that I'm supposed to be doing here. I've also included their email addresses, and the reason why I've done their email addresses is because I don't want people to be what's known, I believe, as doxing. I think that's what the term is. So, I mean, I'm not turning around and saying go round to the house, go round to the place of work or anything like that and start, pitchforks and all that sort of nonsense. But it would be a good idea if more people started taking a look at some of the real information, the likes of that you get from Ivor Cummins and so forth, and also keep very much in mind the Great Barrington Declaration. I will put a link in the description for that one. I haven't included it as a graphic in here. I'll go into that in one of the other episodes possibly, but I'll definitely have a link in the description one way or the other, so you can get some understanding as to what the opinions are of people that are actually very much more concentrated on what the science is behind the virus itself, rather than as you'll see as I'm going through this, the Lord only knows what, that this particular group that are supposed to be now running the country, running the UK, again, take a look and see what's going on in your own country as to where the hell all of their nonsense is coming from. But take a look at some of the details. So for example, that there was there was a study that came out of Denmark that stipulated in no uncertain terms that masks are a waste of time, confirming what I already knew, and as well as making sure that black, dark, whatever they're supposed to be called these days, and that's those people won't be getting pleurisy as well. So not only are masks a complete and utter waste of time, they could potentially do more harm than good. Again, that's where you need to have a listen to some of the stuff that's coming out from some of the people that have been speaking to Dominic Cummins. Dominic Cummins? Ivor Cummins. That was a Freudian slip, wasn't it? But anyway, well, it wasn't a Freudian slip, but anyway, that's just me making a cock up. But anyway, once you've got some information, some proper information that you can actually turn around and refer to. So another example would be around whenever you look at the risks that are associated with this Ponzi China virus. One of them at the top of the list will be either obesity and smoking. Well, there have been 2 studies around smoking, one from Italy and one from China, both of which suggested that people who smoke are less susceptible. So I'm going to have another fag. So I mean the smoking thing, just basically it's just this, the as per usual. What can we put down as being something that puts people at risk? You've got your basic copy and paste list, and smoking is always amongst it. Well, when you actually look into the details, because of the type of lining that you get in your lungs from smoking, it makes it more difficult for things like COVID to actually grab a hold of. So if you are worried about if you're one of these bedwetters that's worried about catching the Ponzi China virus, light up. But anyway, you can provide some real backed up evidence if you try to actually bother to look into things, and then decide which particular individual it is that you think is suitable to be asking the question, or have a clump of them together. I mean, I don't care if you do the entire lot. Write down the email address and then send them a question and say, how come you haven't thought of this? Or how is it that your conclusion is so different to this particular piece of evidence? So rather than just a rambling rant and a rave, which I am more than often tempted to do, send them something specific. So that's why I've got their email address up there rather than their actual address or anything like that, because that's not really what I'm about. So anyway, let's look at the first little grouping that we have here. And the people of interest that I've got on here, I mean, obviously there are comments that can be made around Valence and Whitty that maybe if you look a little bit further into some of the episodes from Delingpole, you'll come across people that know these guys personally, and yeah, top of the tree intelligence is not exactly associated with their names. But let's have a look at a very, very brief across most of these, because I'll be going on for ages always. Rebecca Allen. She's a professor of education. What the hell has that got to do with it? I don't know. I mean, if we are going to be putting together something that's, or if anybody was going to be putting together a team of people to say, well, okay, we need to be doing a reaction to the evidence as to what it is that we're dealing with, i.e. the Ponzi China virus, which doesn't seem to affect the Chinese, which is a question in and of itself. And then you'll have the other people that can be participating in terms of saying, well, how does that affect the wider society? And you know, that's where you start to get your cost benefit analysis, rather than what we've got at the moment, which has come down to such incredibly critical scenarios, such as, is a Scotch egg a meal or not? I mean, when it's got down to that level of idiocy, you know that there's a problem. So the key thing is, and that is, if I can understand when you're putting together a team, that you want people to be able to make that cost benefit analysis and understanding what it is that you're actually dealing with in terms of that specific problem. However, when you've got a group of people that have been put together, that, as I'm going to be demonstrating as I go through, does make you sort of scratch your head and think, well, what is it they're actually trying to do? Because keep in mind, all of these governments turn around and say they're being led by the science. And when they say that they're being led by the science, that means that they're being led by this group of individuals. They've basically passed the buck to this lot. Fair or not, you know, one of the key questions then amongst the individuals is, why would you let them do that? Where has your own sense of integrity gone on that? And why aren't you asking wider questions? And if you're not having your questions answered, to say, well, cost benefit analysis, are we actually doing more harm than good? Things of this nature, then why would you stay there? So these types of questions are quite pertinent. So the next one that we've got is that I'll bring attention to is the Professor John Aston, who is essentially, in that time, he's become a government lackey. He's basically become a civil servant. But his main thing, and that is applied statistics. Can't knock applied statistics and things of that nature, because as you'll see if you do watch Ivor Cummins, a lot of the information, a lot of the science is based around the numbers. That's how you get to understand exactly what's going on. So I won't knock him for that. Wendy Barclay, yeah, this is a good one. So as you can see on there, I mean the official title, Action Medical Research Chair, Virology, Head of Department. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? Do you know what her specialisation is? It's the rhinovirus. It literally is the sniffles. Oh, you couldn't make this shit up, you really couldn't. Then we've got Fliss Benny, who again, another one of these people that has a role in government. She's within the Welsh government, and it's largely around, have we got an app for that? Not entirely sure what much use you're going to get from somebody like that. Professor Phil Blythe, transport. You'd expect that to be sort of feeding in and saying, okay, we've got an issue here. The only thing that they seem to be feeding in is, how are we going to destroy transport? So again, questions. Ian Boyd. I think I've got two. No, I'm all right. It's all right. I'm confusing myself as usual. Ian Boyd, yes. A zoologist. That's high on the list of priorities right now, isn't it? Well, people are losing their jobs and blah-de-blah. We need a zoologist. You literally got the bat sign out and the zoologist comes out. So let's move into the next little grouping. Right, so we're starting off here with Peter Bruce. Right, solid state chemistry and electrochemistry. Not entirely sure what that's supposed to be feeding in. Between that and a couple of other people in that, I mean, there are a few people in there in that I can't help it, but I'm going to have to highlight, because it doesn't do well in terms of being able to put off those people that want to scream about 5G, which I don't think is the cause of any of this by any stretch of the imagination. But there are a few people in here and that do make you sort of scratch your head and go, why would that individual be involved in this? But anyway, let's just highlight the fact that that's his speciality. Caroline Cake. Her specialty is business and engineering. She studied business first and then went into engineering, and now working on health data research. Okay. Ian Diamond, statistician, which, yep, okay, fair enough. Yep, a scruffy looking bugger. John Edmonds. Why have I highlighted him? No idea, because that sounds reasonable to me. Ah, this fella. Professor Sir Jeremy Farrar. This is somebody that has this is somebody that's got a lot of the associations that call a few things into question, because yes, he does advise the WHO. He is a member of SPI, which was launched at the World Economic Forum and is funded by Bill Gates. And when he was the, well, I mean, he still is involved with the Wellcome Trust, he was also cited as an individual responsible for levels of bullying and trying to prevent people from giving out certain information in regards to misuse of African DNA samples. Somebody was trying to whistleblow about this misuse, and it was in direct conflict with the agreements that they had. And yeah, this is a particular individual that raises a red flag for me, as in terms of when you get this type of group together, you're going to have two elements to this, as far as I'm seeing within things, and how things have taken the rather ridiculous path that they've taken, which is that when you get these groups of people together, you'll have a narrative that has already been set. It's set in place, and it's a case of, right, well, this is actually what we're going to do. Now you're going to sit there and feed in your little bits, and we'll either accept what you're saying because it fits with our narrative, or we'll just say, oh, well, thanks very much and that, but you're just here to make up the numbers. You will also have the individuals that are placed within the group whose role it is to be going around and ensuring that the voices remain consistent with the narrative. This is one of those people, as far as I'm concerned. He's the prime candidate for being that type of individual. In certain circles you might call it the snitch. In other circles you might call it the bully boy. I mean, he's a smarmy looking prick, I know that much, but because of the types of involvements that he's got, I mean, it wouldn't at all surprise me that if he was walking around and that and saying, well, okay, well, because I've got access to this finance, if you would like your next project to be funded, here's what you need to say to go along with our narrative. Because he quite clearly works with all of the organisations that people are raising flags around, saying, hang on a bloody minute, something's not right here. So that's why I want to highlight that individual. I think there's something very, very dodgy about him. Moving down a little bit, and that we've got Neil Ferguson, Mr. I always get my models wrong. Now the strange thing about that one is not only do we know that he's wrong, not only do we know that he doesn't believe his own rhetoric, and that because, you know, he wants to go off and be involved in what I believe is called a cuckolding scenario, which is quite bleh. But anyway, so he's a little bit of a dodgy bugger in all circumstances. And when all of the information came out at the wider public to say, well, this idiot has got everything wrong, there was the stepping back or stepping down from the sage grouping, to which he was then miraculously brought straight back in again. So if that doesn't demonstrate an issue, I don't know what does. So let's move into the next slide. Right, this next lot and that has got some stuff that's a little bit interesting. Right, so there's one individual that I'm going to refer back to. So in terms of the order that they're put in, there's one that I'm going to refer back to. So let's start with Robin Grimes, mathematical statistics. Again, okay, fair enough. Ian Hall, Behavioural Insights. That is something that you need to be paying attention to. So now I'm going to skip forward a bit. Dido Harding. Now this is somebody that came over into the NHSI because of her senior role with Talk. So again, if you remember the little conspiracy theories around things and that, and why would somebody like that be involved? Anyway, additionally, another strange appointment is Demis Hassabis, and he's involved in this apparently on the personal capacity as a data scientist. Well, as you can see, he is the co-founder and CEO of DeepMind, which is an AI firm owned by Google, funded by Google. Slightly unusual one, that one, I would say. And the other one that I'll just give a brief note to, and that is that Dr. Indra Joshi from the NHSX, I'd call into question the term doctor. As far as I understand things, she didn't actually graduate, she dropped out. So where does the doctor come from? And everything that she does is based again around apps and web pages and things like that. I mean, really, this is supposed to be a person of relevance? I don't think so. Now I'm going to go back to Dr. David Halpern, and I'll bring up this particular graphic because he is Behavioural Insights Team of the Cabinet Office. Now this Behavioural Insights organisation, as you can see here, and that they've got their 5 episodes that are all available on YouTube, and all with the subject matter of Build Back Better, which, as we know, World Economic Forum, part of the Great Reset, is the terminology of Build Back Better, taken up by Boris, taken up by the guy out in Pakistan, Imran Khan, something like that, taken up by Justin Blackface Trudeau in Canada, taken up by Joe Biden in the States. Everybody repeating the same message. And this guy is Behavioural Insights. So I managed to get through 3 of these episodes, and there's an element of fortune here, because when you have somebody like this and a team of individuals like this, and as you'll see this as I keep continuing going through it, the number of people that are based around psychology and so forth and that. And like I say, I'll refer back to that picture that showed the comparison of coercion. The thing about this particular individual, well, there's two things really. The first thing is this Behavioural Insights organisation. It's another one of these ones that says that they are completely independent of government, and yet he's feeding into the Cabinet Office, and you will see that the Cabinet Office is directly funding his company. So it is basically a government-funded organisation. Despite the fact that they try to say that it's entirely independent and separate, it's funded by the government. The second part is when you do, if you do happen to take the time to listen to some of these episodes, you will come to understand that these people that believe themselves to be so highly intelligent around psychological manipulation and things of this nature. I mean, yes, it's generally quite easy to manipulate a moron, but in terms of the comments that they make around like the transportation one, and the back to school one, and what was the other one that I saw? It was just business behaviours and things that, I mean, episode 1, put it this way, episode 1, I don't think I've sat through an hour and learnt so little since I listened to a Tony Blair speech. I mean, it's just complete and utter arse dribble. These are the people that will literally talk and talk and talk and talk and say absolutely nothing. Nothing of substance whatsoever. Within the transport one, it was literally a case of a couple of guys sitting there saying, oh yes, I speak to my clients about things. Okay, about what exactly? Well, about how they're supposed to do things better. Right, such as, that we need more data. Right, so you basically of no use whatsoever to anybody, man nor beast. And it's kind of a very similar theme running throughout. So, and this is part of what people need to understand in general when it comes down to all this great reset stuff, which I have mentioned in a previous episode, that when they put all this stuff in front of you and that everything looks like it's all really very complex and all the rest of it, but there's no joined up thinking around it at all. It's just a bunch of wish lists, one of which probably contradicts the other, and at the centre of it you've got a gaggle of morons that literally say nothing. Or they will come up with this, like around the AI stuff, and say, oh, this is what we're going to do with AI. You know, the entire population now is going to be essentially having to be funded to stay at home because everything is going to be run by this artificial intelligence and all this sort of stuff and that. And then you ask them to demonstrate anything, and it's literally a case of, oh, well, we haven't done that yet. Oh, well, that doesn't work yet. Oh, and that one, when we turn it on, it has this problem with buffering. And then it doesn't work. I mean, we're literally dealing with people that, I mean, even from his own, you get a feeling about people from their face, which is one of the key reasons why nobody should be wearing masks. A part of human interaction is to look at somebody's face and get an understanding and a feeling for what it is that they're actually all about. And what I get from this guy's face is he's a smarmy prick and he doesn't know jack shit. That is my impression of him. So, I mean, so far in that, you've had that Farrar fella that looks like the dodgy one, and you've got this one that seems to probably think that he's the most intelligent person in the world, and what a prat. The output is absolutely abysmal. So anyway, let's move past that moron. Right, this next lot, who have we got? Dame Teresa Marteau, whatever. Another one, psychological and behavioural sciences. I mean, what does this have to do with making sure that the country is going to be kept healthy and that the economy is going to be able to flourish, which it's clearly the plan is for that not to happen. And so you've got to have all these people in there and that are going to have this behavioural science background, to which I can tell you the result of when you continue to destroy the economy and people's jobs is that they're going to be pissed off. There's only so much crap that you can get away with before somebody starts setting fire to things. That is what we're supposed to be avoiding. Right, another dame, Angela McLean. No, she's a fucking zoologist. She's with the Ministry of Defence. Am I reading this one right? Yeah, she's with the Ministry of Defence and she's a fucking zoologist. I mean, for Christ's sake. Graham Medley. Oh, right. Modeller. Yeah, because that one goes well. And I do actually have a little piece of information that I will go into at some point somewhere. I might have to do it as like a little short on its own. Because one of the Freedom of Information requests that I sent out not that long ago was to the Treasury Department, and it was in regard to some of the government policies around transport, which is all working off the premise that, you know, climate change, everybody's going to die and all the rest of it. So I asked my two questions, my normal two questions, the scientific method and around the modelling, show me the evidence of the two critical equations that lead to the closure problem. If you can't do that, then you're creating policies based on guff, basically. I had a response. Now I'm currently in the process of making a response to their response, which is going to be spread a little bit wider than they probably would hope for. Essentially, the Treasury's official response to those two questions was, because the UN and the IPC said so. That's it. They literally have no clue that they want to be promoting and using our money to develop a bunch of policies based on something somebody told them. They don't know anything about it. I'm not entirely sure when the United Nations and the IPCC ran the government policy programme, but apparently they do. So I'll be getting into that one a little bit later on. So when it comes down to modelling, there are certain types of modelling and that I do understand and I can give justification for. The types of modelling that you're getting in the scenario that we're being shoved down our throats now and all the propaganda, there I do have an issue. And that's where, again, that closure problem comes into consideration. So, Professor Susan Michie, what's the deal with her? Health psychology. So again, slightly unusual. Not really what you would expect to be of a priority in something like the scenario that we're in now. Christine Middlemiss, another bloody vet. Somebody's clearly concerned about people's pets somewhere along the line. I don't know what's going on with that. And then we've got Carol Mundell. Oh yeah, this is a good one. Astrophysics. That's her specialty, astrophysics. That's important in these pressing times, isn't it? Definitely worth it. Yeah, there's other areas I could go in on that, but I'll leave it. Kath Noakes, environmental engineering for buildings. Right, a little bit of build back better stuff, no doubt. Right, so the next group of Herberts. Michael Parker, ethics and humanities, the dreaded humanities. So I dare say somewhere along the lines in that he'll be telling us that he, being a white male, is obviously an awful person and probably should be taken out of the back and shot. Humanities, what can I say? Alan Penn, architecture and urban computing. Again, a bit of a picture building that the priorities that people would expect to be front and centre of the key advisory group at the moment, not really being what you would expect. Guy Poppy, is he on there? Yes, there he is. Ecologist. Ecology, basically an environmental nutter. And he's in the Food Standards Agency. That makes sense, doesn't it? Osama Rahman. I know a poet, but never mind. He's in economics. Where's your cost benefit analysis, Osama? Doesn't seem to exist. Tom Rodden, computer science. What does that have to do with anything? Brooke Rogers, another behavioural scientist. A few pictures evolving here. Move forward a little bit quicker. Kathy Roth. I can't for the life of me find an email for this woman. If anybody else can, Matt, feel free to let me know, and I'll do a little update. But she's another one of these ones that's involved with that Wellcome Trust, and she's involved with the WHO as well, which is why she's probably hiding, which is why there's no photograph of her and that, and you can't get in touch with her. I mean, she either doesn't actually exist, or she's a slightly dodgy individual. Sheila Rowan, physics and astronomy. Physics and astronomy. If I can get my words out. Again, what the hell? Alastair Smith. Now I'm not entirely sure if somebody put in a spelling mistake here, because he's another one that I can't really find anything on. There's a couple of prime candidates that it probably is, but in terms of how they've actually spelt that name and the department that he's in, there's no clear indication as to exactly who that is. So I thought I'd explain that. Professor I don't know how you pronounce this one at all. Something Solanke. What we've got here is our resident social justice warrior. Simple as that. They've always got to have one somewhere. Nicholas Steedman. Well, yeah. Anybody know what gum is about? STDs. That's her specialty. Right, then we've got James Rubin, reader of psychology. Well, that's nice to know. So if anybody's got any psychology papers and that they take in there, they know that he can actually read it. Not entirely sure what use there is beyond that. Mike Short. And again, like I say, the 5G thing, it's not responsible for all of this. But why is somebody that spent, was it 30 years in telecommunications with Telefonica and now is one of the key promoters for 5G, and so why is he involved in this? It's a legitimate question that should be asked. And we've got David Spieghalter. Mathematics. Yeah, I don't have a particular problem with that. I'm not too sure why I've highlighted that. This fella, Jonathan Van Tam. Van Tam. So he's kind of like the whether he's originally in that, he's like the Filipino version of Belgians Jean-Claude Van Damme, but anyway. This guy is kind of amusing in so much as that his expertise is all aspects of influenza except for anything that has got any details around it. So essentially what this guy can do is, if you walk in the room and go, I've got the flu, he can look at you for a moment and go, yeah, you've got the flu. That's about it. So that's useful. Russell Viner. Philosophy. That is his actual specialty. Despite the title, Professor in Adolescent Health, his speciality and his area of study is philosophy. What the hell has that got to do with anything? Charlotte Watts. I'm sure there was something about her as well. Yeah, I can't remember. Let's have a look if there's anything on there additional. Yeah. I've got a funny feeling that Charlotte Watts has got some involvement with some other organisations that are of note, but I shall leave it for the time being. Right, so coming towards the end at last. Roswin Walker. Another one whose area of study is philosophy. Who cares? Why is she there? Mark Walport. Now, I've highlighted him for a particular reason. Right, he was the director of the Wellcome Trust between 2003 and 2013. Now, so if you remember back to what I'd said about the Wellcome Trust and their relationships with the World Economic Forum, with Bill Gates, etc., etc., and now he is involved as the Chief Executive of the UK Research and Innovation. That is going to become a very, very important part of part 2 of episode 19. So I just want to flag him up for that purpose, and I think I'll leave that until I do actually go into the details in part 2. But for somebody with that background, with those types of people that he's dealing with, for him to be involved in that specific role raises a red flag for me. Like I say, I'll go into the details of that later. Lucy Yardley, another one, philosophy. Oh, sorry, no, psychology, this one. I mean, in terms of the people that we've gone through, I mean, these are all of them from the core SAGE group. So, right, so let's break this down, and that's how you understand it. So you've got the total number of people from SAGE of 86 people. Only 26 of them have got something to do with epidemiology, and the people that you would expect to, some of the mathematicians as well, and modelers, that you could kind of expect to be involved with this in terms of being able to gather the data to understand what's going on. But only 26 of them out of the 86. So exactly how it works, that the rest of them are providing information that we're all apparently being subject to say that this is how we've ended up with these different tier systems, and the Scotch egg scenario. It kind of gives you a very good indication as to why everything is as idiotic as it plainly is. So the other part that I'm not entirely sure how many people know this. SAGE isn't the only group, because there are subgroups which feed into it, for which some of these people from this 86 sit within the subgroups as well. So in terms of the total number of people, there are 285 people feeding into this lunacy. So what I've done there is I've broken down the different groups. So for example, you've got the scientific pandemic influenza group on behaviours. Again, behaviours. That particular group, there are 42 people within that group, of which 32 are made up of individuals that are separate from the main group in SAGE. So 10 members from SAGE are sitting in that group. Okay, so that's why there's a difference between the 42 and the 32. If you take out the members of SAGE, that's how many other individuals there are. So the scientific pandemic influenza and group on modelling, 44 people are taking part in that. There's 10 participants that come from the main SAGE group, so there are 34 additional individuals involved. PHE serology working group, only 3 people from SAGE are sitting in on that group. COVID-19 clinical information network, only 9 people in the group as a total, and 3 of them are come from SAGE. The modelling group, 14, so there's 8 people from SAGE that are sitting in on that. Children's Task and Finishing Working Group. That's a bloody unusual working group, isn't it? So we've got... Oh God, my maths has gone at me. 12 people, moron. 12 people from SAGE that are sitting in on that group. Hospital Onset COVID-19 Working Group. 6 people from SAGE are sat in on that. And the ethnicity subgroup. Because these days you've absolutely got to have all of your social justice warrior nonsense thrown into the mix. And what we've got there then, that's all, I'm just trying to get my screens back together again. So your social justice warriors, there's 4 people from SAGE that are sat in on that one. So all people across all subgroups, and then SAGE itself, 217 people. And what we're looking at is this scenario of too many cooks, as well as too many completely irrelevant cooks who are not actually cooks and shouldn't be in the kitchen. So we've got that problem. Second part of the problem, the university representation. So people whose entire career, right the way through to what they're doing now, solely based around universities. 49% of the people sitting within SAGE, sorry, not just within SAGE, within all of this 217, 49% of them, 107 people, purely based on universities. So the reason why I've got a problem with that is because people that are solely based in universities have got a very distinct lack of sense of reality. They live in a bubble, in a little bubble, and they don't understand the real world. So to have 49% of these people is a problem. Bureaucrats make up 32%. Now, some of those bureaucrats have come from academia as well. which kind of makes it worse. So 81% of the people involved are ones that you might want to have a word with some of them, because so if you've got people that are proper epidemiologists that are doing this on a research level on a continual basis, that have got might have some sort of understanding as to how any virus evolves and things like that, and what you'd expect to take place as a result of that. What do you call it? Can't remember the bloody word now. Oh, it doesn't matter. But anyway, because viruses don't stay stable, they do. Oh, bollocks! They change. I can't remember. It begins with an M, but anyway, they change over time, evolve or whatever. So people that have got some kind of understanding around that and be able to feed in some information on that, yeah, not a problem with that at all, because that's a very specialised area. But to have that very same person then turn around and telling the entire country what we're supposed to be doing, and to the extent of the lunacy that is now going on, where it's doing considerably more harm than good, and it is destroying the economy, and it's quite plain that even those individuals, as much as they might be taking part in this, you're going to have to sit back and go, well, do you actually have any idea that your name is being used to be able to push something that has got absolutely nothing to do with what your potential advice could be? Because it is so obvious that this has become an entirely ideological agenda, which is why simultaneously they've run out with this great reset and more of the sustainability goals, and we've got to build back greener, and absolute bullshit they're coming out with that has got nothing to do with the fact that, as I've said previously, and that we're looking towards something that has got at worst a 0.2% risk factor, and this is not stipulated enough by anyone at all. So I wanted to give this overview of these people within SAGE to give a demonstration as to where a problem is quite plainly obvious for people to see. That when you get this type of gaggle of people, as to whether they can actually sit in a room together or even working separately, it doesn't really matter how they're doing it, to be putting this kind of thing together, and the utter guff that they come out with, or that they're steered towards, which I kind of think is probably more the problem. And the reason why I wanted to point this out, A, because it's relevant right now, that people need to understand this, but B, because it will feed into the reason why I'm going to be demonstrating and saying what I'm going to say in terms of part 2 and part 3. Okay? So, pay some attention to this. Like I said, take down some email addresses of the ones that you've decided that you want to pick and choose from. If there's anybody that wants to actually have a either a copy of this particular part of the PowerPoint presentation, and I've got Christ, I don't know, I think I've got something like about 60 different slides in this now. I can sort of cut and paste out these particular slides if you just want this, or I do have an Excel sheet as well that's got some information on these people. If anybody needs that, you're going to have to get in touch with me, because I'm not going to be publishing it anywhere. But the easier alternative would be, you know, pause button, jot down what the addresses are, which tends to be something I would prefer people to do, because then it means that you're actually serious about doing something, rather than just copy and pasting everything that you do, which never really goes anywhere, because if you do get an answer, you're probably not going to understand it. So it's important from that perspective. It's important for people to understand who this group is that the government keep on saying we're relying on the science, to where it comes from, and how so many of them are completely irrelevant. And it also gives you the insight as to why it is that we do not have any cost benefit analysis, and why we don't have anything that remotely resembles any kind of sense in terms of what it is that they're actually doing to the country as a result of something that seriously is not showing any great anomaly towards what would be the standard scenario for this time of year. I mean, are there a few more deaths than normal? Yes, there are. And when I say normal, and that I'm talking about when they've done the average over 5 to 10 years. You will find, though, and that when you look back in that 5 to 10 year period, that there have been years that have spiked up that are very, very similar and actually been worse than what we're seeing now. And this is a particular problem because the numbers of people that are going to be seriously impacted and seriously harmed from this, including people that are actually going to die from the policies that are put in place, it's all coming out of what this group of people have, whether it's been shoved on them or whether they've been active, willing and complicit in this, I don't know. But when the government say, oh, we're just being guided by the science, quite clearly they're not being guided by anything remotely sufficient to suggest that they know what they're doing. I mean, when it comes down to the other people that are involved in this, as in within the other working groups, I will be working on their specific details as well. So I've got the entire list of everybody and exactly who they are, exactly what it is that they do, exactly what their specialty is, and I will get their contact details as well. I haven't had time to do every single one of them, but you know, I'll get around to it. Obviously, as I've said previously, that on a number of occasions I do have other things to do. So I think this will bring an end to part 1 of episode 19, and hope there's something useful in there for people. And that's when, like I said, I mean, keep in mind what it is that I've demonstrated, keep in mind how these groups are put together and whether they actually are relevant and suitable in terms of what it is they're trying to provide as an outcome. This becomes quite critical as I move forward into particularly part 2 of episode 19. I can't remember what I've called it now. And then the rationale behind what I'll be presenting in the third part. So yes, I think I've probably gone on for far longer than I thought I was going to. So I will call it an end. Like I say, no FOWEFUN in this episode, and there won't be in the next 2 either. And yeah, hopefully you've had something insightful. So apologies again for the missing last week, but as I'm sure you can appreciate, or you will do after you see the 3 that I put out, I've had enough preparation work to do that means that I've had to add that delay. So who knows, by the end of even by the end of this weekend except the hair's going to just get longer and longer and greyer and by the time we get to the end of this. But anyway, some important stuff really, if you bother to take the time and interested in having a look. So any comments appreciated. Anybody that wants the information, the contact details will be included, and obviously I'll leave on the standard ending with the companies that's not paid advertisements, and obviously I've got my own little advertisement going on here. Alright, so cheers, I'll see you in part 2.